Alright, so we're checking out another portable power station. This is from a company called UDPOWER, and this is the S1200. And for this capacity and size, it's these power stations are getting smaller and lighter. This one here is about 13.5 inches by 9.5 by 9.7 inches and only weighs about 26 pounds. So compared to some of the other power stations I've reviewed in the past for around this capacity, which is around 1191 watt hours, the size and the weight is going down. It's getting smaller and getting lighter, which is pretty good to see. So of course you get the power station in the box, you get a AC charging cable, and you get a car charging cable, and you get a manual. Of course, we'll show you some of the specs and everything here in a second. But just taking a quick look around the power station, we got a nice little display here. I'll show you in the manual what all the little icons and stuff that'll pop up when all the different things occur. You have a bunch of outputs here, 5 AC plugs on a pure sine wave inverter. It does 1200 watts nominal, or continuous, up to 1800 watts burst, and I'll explain how the burst function works. It's called UDPOWER is what they're calling it, but it's the same. It operates in the same way that a lot of the same sort of burst functions work on a lot of other power stations, pretty much identical. You have all these DC outputs here, USB power delivery, 100 watts on USB-C, and then you have 4 USB-A. This is the solar DC in here for the car charger, and also can work with solar panels. 2 5521 barrel plugs here, and I believe it's the same specs as the cigarette lighter, which is 12 volts at 10 amps. I'll show you the specs here in a second in the manual. But yeah, basically you have 15 outputs here, as well as wireless charging up on top, and that's at 15 watts. So if you have a phone that has a wireless charging capability, you can throw it up on there and charge up your wireless devices on there as well. You do have to turn on the button here for DC power for the wireless charging, as well as all these DC functions here. You can see it's lit up right now, and that's the little icon for that. And then you can turn on the AC inverter. Now it's lit up here, and then that should show up here as well. So on top here you have a nice carrying handle. It's very robust, a nice grip here, so quite secure in terms of carrying it around. In the back you have an XT60 plug for your solar panels, and also an AC plug for obviously charging up this bad boy. And then you've got vents on the left and the right side. Alright, I'm going to take a quick look at the specs here in the manual. So of course the chemistry in this power station is lithium iron phosphate, like most are these days, and you see your LFP. So 80% capacity for 3000 cycles. And here are the dimensions, 13.7 by 9.5 by 9.7, and weighs about 26 pounds. It is UL certified, so if you're worried about battery fires, this one is UL certified. Now in terms of the battery pack itself inside, this is what it's calling it, a DFDLFR60130. I'm not sure what 8 skewers means, but it's a 46.5 amp hour, 25.6 volt battery internally. So in terms of the output specifications for the cigarette lighter, it's 12 volts and 12 amps, so 144 watts max. So I think I said on the label here it was 12 volts and 10 amps, but in the manual it's saying 12 volts and 12 amps. Same for the 5521 outputs. This is equipped with a UPS mode, so they're calling it UPS Prime is what the feature. So basically it is a standard UPS function. I tested it with just a light, so I plugged in a light here in the front on the AC port, and had it also plugged into the wall, of course, in the back, and I just unplugged it, so simulating a power outage, and there was no flicker in the light or anything, so it just had to switch over as expected. And it says that the switchover time is going to be 10 milliseconds or less. So as long as your equipment, whatever you're particularly using, is okay with that, then you shouldn't suffer any sort of malfunction on your equipment. Here are the specs on the USB-A ports, 5 volts and the 2.4 amps, and then going all the way up to 9 volts and 2 amps for a max of 54 watts. And I think that is going to be for all of the 4 ports. And on the USB-C ports, you got 5 volts at 3 amps, all the way up to 20 volts at 5 amps, and you have a total output of 100 watts. Now in the input specifications, of course, AC is going to be 120 volts, 800 watts max. The DC 7909 port is actually the one that's the solar input port on the front, but it'll work for any DC input within these specifications, 12 volts and 12 amps up to 144 watts max. And then the solar charging input port in the back, that's the XT60. It's going to be a range from 12 volts to 75 volts at 12 amps max, so 400 watts max total. So when I did do my solar charging test, I did use the XT60 in the back with a panel that had a 100 watt output, and it worked as expected. I think that if you're going to be maybe putting additional panels in either series or parallel, you just want to make sure you're within the 12 to 75 volts total, and you should be good to go. And of course, it's going to top out at 400 watts max. But for my 100 watt panel, it worked exactly as expected, no issues at all. Now, I did ask the manufacturer about charging the power station on the XT60 on the back, as well as on the 7909 port on the front, and you can do both at the same time within those input limits. So if you have additional solar panels, say if you've maxed out the 400 watts in the back and you have another 100 watt panel or up to 144 watts, you can plug that in as well and get additional charging, and it'll charge up faster. Now, in terms of the AC charging, you have two modes. You have this optimized and you have a fast charging mode. And in the optimized mode, it'll charge at 400 watts. So if you don't need to charge it at max speed, you can charge it at a lower rate to sort of help preserve the health of the battery. But if you do want to charge it at max speeds, you can charge it at 800 watts. Switch this over to fast charging, and it will go 800 watts. I think it's 0 to 80% in about 1.5 hours. So if you need fast charging, you can charge up to 800 watts. Now, in terms of my capacity testing, I did my standard capacity test on the cigarette port here at 12 volts. I think I ran around 80 watts, and I forget the exact runtime, but it actually took about 14 hours, I think, if I remember right. And it was basically from 100% to 0. I got 1,069 watt hours out of the advertised 1,191 watt hours. And so that's around 90%, which is about right for most of these power stations. It's run right in line with all the other ones I've tested. And that's because the battery inside there, as I said before, is like 25 volts, and it's doing a DC-DC conversion to output about 12 volts on this port. So there's a little bit of loss internally when you're draining out of the DC ports. But that's normal. That's normally to be expected on all power stations, but 90% is just in line and pretty good for this model. So in the front here, you have these LED lights for, I guess, if you're in a camping situation, just short press this and you get the first level of illumination, and then you press it again, it goes up a little higher. Then you get the highest level, level 3, and then you press it again, it'll turn off. If you long press it for 3 seconds, it'll go into SOS mode, which it just starts flashing like that, and short press it again to turn the light off. There's another switch here in the front called normal and eco mode, and you can see when we switch it here, you get a little eco mode leaf right there, and basically what that does is it will power off the screen in, I think, 2 minutes. So if there's no load, nothing going on, the screen will turn off in 2 minutes instead of 5 minutes on normal mode. And a power station, if there's no draw on anything here, like if things are plugged in but it's not drawing any current and there's no load, the power station will completely shut off in 4 hours. But if it's on normal mode, it will shut off in 20 hours. So it's basically eco mode just shuts things off sooner, so it preserves the battery, because obviously if the screen is on, or if anything is turned on inside, it does have a little bit of parasitic drain. So eco mode will shut things off quicker. So if you're worried about draining your battery if you're going to be having this for a long period of time without charging it, then definitely turn that on and it'll preserve your battery. But in terms of the rest of the stuff on the screen here, obviously on this side here is going to show your inputs in watts, and on the right side it's going to be output in watts. But then you got all these little icons like the eco mode, the UPS prime, when all the things are basically turned on. They will light up here, and this is all basically the details on all of those little indicators. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to read up all that. But yeah, those will just pop up down here on the bottom whenever certain situations occur. So as I mentioned, on the AC ports, it'll burst up to 1800 watts. That's the UD turbo function. And I did test that with a hairdryer. This hairdryer typically runs at max at around 1700 watts. So I was expecting this to be a good test, and it actually performed flawlessly. So when I ramped up basically the power on it, and basically turned it up to higher levels, and when it maxed out to around 1600 watts, and then as soon as it detected that it was going over the 1200 watts, it did the UD turbo function kicked in, and it dropped the wattage load below 1200 watts for the hairdryer. And the way it works is it does like a voltage trick inside the power station, and instead of outputting 120 volts to the hairdryer, it's outputting a lower voltage basically at that current, so that it can keep that current under 1200 watts, which is what the inverter is happy with. So you do need devices that are okay with that. Some devices may not like that. For most particular, in terms of like hair dryers, heating elements, that kind of stuff, you shouldn't have any issues with the UD turbo function. Anyway, I think it's going to cover for my review of the UDPOWER S1200. These are getting better, lighter, smaller, just more capacity in a smaller amount of space and weight. And the prices are really good as well. So right now, I think it's around $500. I remember not too long ago, things in the 1 kilowatt hour range of capacity were closer to $1,000, and now we're closer to $500, which is kind of impressive, given the fact that it's only been maybe a year or two since these were around that price point. So they're falling continuously into fall in terms of price, which is pretty amazing. So if you're interested in this product, check it out. There'll be a link down in the video description. There might be an additional discount code there as well. So it might even be cheaper depending on when you're watching this video. Anyway, it's going to cover for this video. If you got any questions and comments, let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.